Good day, it's Nick here. I've decided to make a little video about 8 reflections on the painting process. The reason for it was because I was meant to do a demonstration for an art group that was postponed by the COVID-19 outbreak, and I thought, well, I may as well make a video and share it since everyone seems to be doing it at this stage. And I've had 8 reflections that I wrote down in a sketchbook while I was working on a string of little paintings. I've got them here, I could show them. So these were little, this is one of them, a little ghost crab, photographed at Causey Bay. Another one, similar sort of lighting and use of color and so from an angle. The reason for the ghost crab paintings was really because of the big 2 by 1.5 meter canvas I'm working on at the moment, where I'm working in some ghost crabs, and I wanted to just get a feel about painting them. You know, I've never painted a crab in my life, and whether it would even work. This is just a little loggerhead painting I did. On a sort of a dark green. Just played with that, trying to get away from always using the turquoise colors, although they tend to work very nicely. Another one here from the top, also a baby loggerhead. Right, and then also, yeah, okay, so let me jump into the first point of the 8 reflections, and that is, and this one became glaring to me with the previous demonstration I did at Makiwa Gallery in December last year, and that is that even though a gallery space or exhibition space may or is expected to be professional and almost clinical in a way, we should not confuse it with the art making process, which I believe should be rather messy, should be experimental. You should be scratching out, you should be jotting down, and that art making process in my mind is quite a contrast to what that final product and what you end up with as an artwork, and that in my opinion the best way would not be to try and keep that cleanliness and that professional look from all the way through. You really should have a space where you can throw some paint around and make mistakes and try things and so forth. Otherwise, your artworks are most probably going to end up rather contrived. Right, so the second point is really more about, oh wait, I forgot about this little one. This one was also what I did during that time, about perhaps a bit more layered, and in fact, well, I really just photographed one of Lucian's little toys, squeaky toys, yeah, worked it into a composition, thinking about it as a children's toy, the role that children will play in ecology in the future, as well as the fact that that little toy is made of plastic, and if it would float in the ocean, it would end up breaking down, which is would start to collect the persistent organic pollutants, but we're not going to go deeper into that. Right, where was I? The next point would be, which is more about painting, is that either I feel you should trap the light, or you should rather bathe the painting in light. And I mean, those are 2 contrasts, and I mean, you should work with them, but to find yourself right in the middle of that is perhaps not a good place to be, meaning that in your painting you need to feel the light. There could be a lot of light in your painting, meaning that then you would need to have certain darker areas in there that might not be much, but they should definitely be there. And then if you do quite a dark painting, that you should trap the light, and there should definitely be some highlights in there. to play with. Okay, so my next point here, the third point, ties into that, and in a way I've now mentioned that already, and that is that there should always at least be a little bit of crisp highlights in the painting, or at least some spots of deep translucent shadows. And here that I'm saying at least because you might find a painting where there's a lot of highlight, it's quite high key, but you need at least some dark areas to anchor it. And the same way, if you do decide to perhaps do a night scene or quite a dramatic dark scene, there should at least be some areas or a little area where there are some crisp highlight in there for that range. It's the same. I see this very much as piano playing. When you're playing on a keyboard, and perhaps it's part of my absolute love of the instrument and what people are doing with it, is you can't just play all the high key notes, and you can't only play all the dark, the deeper notes. You really need to play the range, but make sure there's at least a bit of on both ends. Okay. My next point, the fourth point, is when in doubt, scrape it off. It might sound intense. It really is in a way, but I can promise you I've never regretted scraping off a section or even a whole painting, because it always comes out better the next time you do it. And even in this little ones I've shown you, for one of them I've literally repainted it 4 times and scraped it off 3 times, but then the almost equivalent other one took me less than half an hour to do. Now I've just find, especially if you think about doing demonstrations for people, there's no way you can really predict whether the painting you're working on is going to work immediately or not. You're just going to have to do it, get a feel for it, and if it doesn't work, if you feel you've over-labored a section, it's not the result you want, take a nice palette knife and scrape it off and go again. It really is worth it, and it really is something that I think starts to then separate those that are trying to, or maybe don't really know what they're doing, or trying to work at it. Separates those from the ones that, in fact, you look at the work and it seems like they know what they're doing. Okay, then my next point would be the 5th point, is something I've just found from doing this over and over, is that capturing the loose impression of what you want is perhaps the most challenging part of the painting. And you could always selectively add the detail in, and so, but that tends to be a bit easier. I also find that as much as you have your reference photographs, I do tend to these days spend more time almost painting from my mind, because there is this impression I'm trying to capture, and I need to get that mental picture down as well, even though the painting might consist of 3 or 4 reference photographs that I would have then mapped out in a graphite drawing, but really it's about capturing that loose impression, and that is really the part where you are trying to capture what it is that you're trying to do, create the right type of mood and reflection. The 6th point, and I'm going to perhaps move a little bit quicker because of the essence of time, is to dissolve the edges where you can, and dissolve them, because in my opinion you can always paint them back in again. It's something that I've learned from Dee Donaldson at one of the workshops, but it really is like that. You do not, unless you're one of those type of realist artists, you do not need to have all your edges crisp and so forth. You can leave some to the imagination, you dissolve some of them, and you can repaint the important ones back in again, and I think that makes for, in general, that makes for good impressionist painting as it is. The 7th point and the 8th point are in a way tied together. And that is, use the minimum colors in a mixture, in a paint mixture, if you are mixing colors. And the reason would be to try and get the richest color that you can. The more colors you mix, the grayer your mixtures become. So you might have a limited palette. You might decide to starve your palette, only work with 3 or 4, as I'm doing with one of my bigger ones now at the moment. But you do not want to overmix your colors. You do want to try and capture a richness in them and keep that. And then importantly, when you're working through sort of the bulk of your painting, try and keep using the white to a minimum, especially if you're using titanium white. It tends to give a blue and cooler effect to your painting, and it definitely dulls down your richer color. You can get nice rich colors through using a translucent effect first, and then work gradually from there, and only really use the white where they need to be. And then lastly, the 8th point, in your highlights, only add 1 or 2 colors in your real highlights, because that will ensure that you have a crisp outcome and a nice crisp highlight to what it is that you to the area that you're painting, because the last thing you want are those highlights, that areas that almost is a cherry on the cake, or that beautiful little passages. You want that to be muddy and dirty, so in contrast to that, really your grays, you can use and should probably use a lot of grays in your painting, where you're mixing them, your warms and your cool grays. But when it comes to your highlights, really try and keep those crisp blue, crisp green, crisp orange or yellow or pink or so. Just keep those like that, and that's really it. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this little video. And yeah, I'm probably going to do some more. So really, yeah. Here's just 1 or 2 little sketches also I did in the preparation. That's the one I've just shown you. These are future ones I'm in the process of working on. And just back to that first point, is the importance of really just having this type of book where you can do lots of little sketches, experiments. These are little studies I've done, probably about 5 minutes each, 3 to 5 minutes each. And yeah, and this is of what I've just shown you of my previous demonstration. This is a painting that I ended up doing at that one. And I thank you for watching, and yeah, hope to see you soon, and I'll probably be sharing some more. Great.